Good morning, good afternoon, good evening, and welcome back to episode 11 of the Free State Sports Podcast. We got a bunch of things to discuss about the NFL today. We've been away for a little while because we had some things pop up, weren't available on our last recording schedule. So we're back at it. We're available on Spotify, YouTube, and you can also follow us on Instagram at Free State Sports. Links to all that are in the description. Keep an eye out as we continue to expand on other platforms as well. Thank you to everyone that's been tuning in. A lot of you have been tuning in from the shorts that we've been putting out. We appreciate all the support, and we'd love to see you let us know in the comments what you'd like to see more of on the podcast. And as always, stay engaged with topics we discuss on the podcast. Let us know your thoughts and opinions in the comments. Huge podcast news. Starting today with this episode, we're going to be restructuring the podcast a little bit. So many of you tune in for the NFL and sometimes the NBA or MLB stuff we talk about. For those that don't know, we are also big pro wrestling nerds here, WWE in particular. We've covered a lot of wrestling stuff on previous episodes. We know not quite as many of you have an interest in that, so we decided that we're going to go ahead and split the podcast into two separate podcasts each every other week. It's going to be similar schedule to what we have now, but we're going to have two podcast episodes every other week. So one will be revolving around the main sports like the NFL for all that are interested in that, and the other will be all things professional wrestling. So this is going to allow us to optimize each episode in the form of more organized content. We think it'll make the main episodes more enjoyable for people that tune in for those sports as well. And if you're into pro wrestling, be sure to come over and check out those new episodes, the split-off episodes, where we're going to be talking about all things pro wrestling. And as of right now, the plan is to continue the main episodes covering sports like the NFL. We'll be doing plenty of that now that the season's in full swing. Lots to talk about. Every other Wednesday on YouTube and Spotify, we try to do that. And as for the pro wrestling episodes, we're going to try to have those up every other Friday. So that'll also be on YouTube and Spotify. So that's a new podcast episode available on YouTube and Spotify bi-weekly. We're going to shoot for Wednesdays and Fridays, so be sure to check those out. Joining me today is one of my two co-hosts. Saquon is out saving the world again. Andrew, how you doing today?
Absolutely fantastic. And let me say, it is good to be back. I've missed this for the week we had off.
Yeah. It's already kind of hard to keep up with just on a bi-weekly basis, and then really all of us had a bunch of stuff pop up. You ended up not feeling well. Saquon had some obligations, so weren't able to record the last episode, but we're back in full swing, and there's a lot of stuff to cover.
A lot of stuff.
So, fresh on our minds as Ravens fans, full disclosure, we're fresh off the Ravens versus the Bengals. Safe to say this was the game of the year so far. Would you agree with that, Andrew?
I mean, absolutely. It was such a great up-and-down game from any point.
Yeah, it really was. It was a duel between Lamar and Joe Burrow. Lamar ended up throwing for 348 yards and 4 touchdowns. Joe Burrow threw for 392 and 5 touchdowns. He did have a critical interception by Marlon Humphrey late in the game.
Game-saving interception.
Marlon Humphrey's looking really good this season. Kind of fell off a little bit. I was very critical of him. But he's kind of putting it together this year, so I'm happy to see that. Both offensives with a ton of huge plays. It came down to a missed field goal in overtime by Evan McPherson due to a bad hold, but also you pointed out off podcast that the bad hold might not have affected it as much as originally thought. Either way, there was a missed field goal. Ravens get the ball back, and Derrick Henry called game with a huge run, got us into field goal range, and Justin Tucker wins the game in overtime, which is poetic because he's been struggling from 50-plus this year. A lot of people have been critical of him. Came in clutch with a tying kick from 56 to bring us to overtime, and then he ended up kicking the game-winning kick as well.
Yeah, no, this was an absolute great game, and I want to point out positives and negatives on both sides, both for the Ravens and Bengals here. One major positive, if you're a Bengals fan, is Sam Hubbard is just shining. Absolute shining for the team. He had, I believe it was 9 tackles and a really big sack. And I think, was he in on that safety?
I believe he was, yeah. He was all over the place.
He was all over the place. Jamar Chase continues to shine against the Ravens.
Yep, big day for him.
10 catches for 193 yards and 2 touchdowns. And T. Higgins, I think they're glad to have T. Higgins back. He came down with 9 catches for 83 yards and 2 touchdowns as well.
Yep.
Something big here is Lamar Jackson had 9 different receivers catch a football today.
Oh, wow.
9 different receivers. Joe Burrow only had 5 different receivers.
Uh-huh.
That tends to stand out. And one big positive I wanted to hand out for Bengals fans is they did really good containing Derrick Henry all the way up into that final run.
Yeah, they did. Their run defense was really good.
I think without that final run, Derrick Henry would have finished with like 41 yards.
Yeah. He didn't have a very strong game up until that point.
And congratulations to Derrick Henry for becoming one of the few to surpass 10,000 yards and score their 100th career touchdown within their first 125 games. It's only been done by LaDainian Tomlinson, Jim Brown, Emmitt Smith, and Adrian Peterson, all Hall of Famers.
Yeah, that's good company to be in. So a lot of people thought Derrick Henry might be washed coming into Baltimore, but he's certainly proven a lot of people wrong.
Oh, absolutely. And I also wanted to give a nice shout out to Zay Flowers, who came down with 7 catches for 111 yards.
Big day for him, too.
And Rashad Bateman, who came down with 4 catches for 48 yards and a touchdown.
Yeah, Lamar was spreading that ball around like crazy.
Oh, yeah. I think it was 2 touchdowns to Likely.
Yep.
I think it was a touchdown to Isaiah Kohler. Not
Charlie
Isaiah,
Kohler.
Charlie Kohler, yeah. They really did spread that football around. The Ravens defense did not do good this game.
No,
they did great containing the run.
Yeah.
With the exception of like 1 or 2 drives.
Yeah, their pass defense was struggling up until a couple weeks ago, and then it started to come together, but this game they really struggled against the pass again.
Yeah, and that's just a testament to how good Joe Burrow and the wide receiver core of the Bengals are.
Yeah.
Like I said, Marlon Humphreys came down with that clutch interception. That was insane. And it was a 10-point comeback for the Ravens multiple times in the fourth quarter.
Yeah, it's nice to see that because usually the Ravens have been on the other end of that. So it's nice to see us have a late comeback instead of give up a late comeback. So that was a fun one to watch.
Oh, absolutely.
Well, for it being so early in the season, Andrew, there's been a lot of significant injuries, too many to list, really. A lot of people placed on IR early on.
Mm-hmm.
Biggest injury news. Now, some of this is maybe a little dated at this point, but since we haven't been back for the podcast in a little bit, we're still going to report on it. So the biggest injury news comes from Miami. I'm sure everybody and their mother knows about this by now. Quarterback Tua, not going to try to say his last name because I butcher it every time.
Tagovailoa.
There you go. Tua went down with another concussion after a tackle from none other than Damar Hamlin. He could be seen sort of doing that same fencing poster with his hand that he did before.
It's not Damar's fault.
It's not. It's
Tua
not.
lowered
it's just,
his helmet.
Yeah, he did. I don't know what he was thinking. He should have slid. But it's just kind of ironic that should be the case.
Oh, yeah, it is. It's not the only injury news coming out of Miami, though.
Who was the other one?
Devon Achane just got injured.
I did hear about that, yeah.
Also a concussion.
Concussions, no joke. There's been a handful of those this year as well. Tua was able to walk off with assistance, and he said he plans on returning as soon as he's cleared by doctors. So my tough question to ask you, Andrew, is do you think it's time for Tua to consider hanging it up after this concussion?
We've had this conversation in the past, and I probably... In the past, I said yes.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah, I really do. It's getting pretty blatant that Tua is susceptible to concussions, and the last thing we need is for another Antonio Brown or even a Chris Benoit to hit this world.
Yeah.
Which is all, like, I understand that what they've done, Antonio Brown and Chris Benoit, is entirely wrong, but how much control do they really have of their own body? I don't want to see Tua end up like that. And I'm sure he's a great guy. I really am sure he is a great guy, and he wants to be able to do this. He probably hates being told that he needs to hang it up.
Yeah.
But I think he does.
I would agree with that. I think when you've had that many concussions, and he's had a few other pretty significant injuries as well as a whole, but when you've had so many concussions, severe ones, that simply lowering your head, and it's not like it was a hard hit. Now, he did lower his head, but it wasn't something that looked like it should have ended the way it did.
Yeah.
For him to be that susceptible to concussions this early on, I think it's a telltale sign that he has to consider moving on, because I just concussions are not something you want to play with. You and me have both had concussions. They are not fun, and we're not athletes by any means, but just the way that they've affected us as normal, day-to-day people. I can't imagine being an athlete in a physical contact sport like that. So.
Oh yeah, and they say that the more concussions you have, the more susceptible you become to having more concussions.
Yeah. Again, that's an injury that's no joke. It's not something to mess around with. And with it being so easy to obtain them in the sport of football, especially as a quarterback, really, I think if I was Tua, I would hang it up. But it's clear that he loves the game and he wants to come back, and I wish him the best, and I hope he stays healthy. But I just really don't trust that the healthy decision is to continue playing football. So I'm rooting for him, but I would definitely say that it might be time for him to consider hanging it up. But speaking of injuries, we'll head over to the Carolina Panthers, who, this is not actually injury-related at all. I don't know why I said that. But Andy Dalton was named the starting quarterback amidst Bryce Young's recent struggles. Again, this was a few weeks ago at this point. But this is actually going to be this week's poll of the podcast, so be sure to participate in that on our YouTube channel and on Spotify when we put those polls up. Love to hear your feedback, and of course in the comments as well. Love to see your thoughts and opinions. So here's the question for you, Andrew. Do you think benching Bryce Young in favor of Andy Dalton is the right move for Carolina?
No. And let me just say, I don't think Andy Dalton is going to save Carolina. I don't think Bryce Young is going to save Carolina. I don't think either of them are. I think they made a big mistake, and what they need to do is move on from Bryce Young, just entirely. I mean, they need to trade him, get what they can for him. They're probably not going to get much. They're not going to get a first or second.
Absolutely not.
I would say probably a fourth, maybe a fifth round pick.
Yeah, I'd try to get some kind of package for him.
Yeah, they screwed up, and the worst part is, I don't think it's Bryce Young. I think Carolina cannot develop a quarterback to save their life. They're a terrible team. That's why a veteran like Andy Dalton, when he stepped in, did so well, because he wasn't growing up in this Carolina system.
Yeah, I would agree with that. It was cool seeing Andy Dalton come out and ball out the way he did that first game that he started. I think he was the first quarterback this season to reach 300 yards, which since then a lot of them have done that. But it was cool to see him kind of come out and perform well. But like you said, I definitely don't see him saving the team. Dare I say, Carolina might be in the phase where you could consider them a poverty franchise.
More than just consider. I mean,
yeah, they finished dead last year, and I think there's a strong chance that they could finish dead last this year. I just don't see Andy Dalton. Really, I don't see any caliber quarterback saving them at this point. I understand the benching of Bryce Young, and it might not even be for a performance standpoint. It might be for Bryce Young's sake, and give him more time to develop or whatever they're trying to do with him. But I don't know. I think it's bad news for Bryce Young, and it's still bad news for Carolina. But I'd love to see Bryce Young get a shot somewhere else, see if he's really that bad, or if he, I would like to see how bad or how good he really is outside of Carolina. So I hope that he gets a chance somewhere at some point down the line.
Oh, I do too. Again, seems like a genuinely nice kid, tries to keep his head up. I think he's got support from the fans behind him at the very least.
Absolutely.
Well, what fans remain.
Yeah.
I don't know if you know what happened last year at the Panthers Stadium.
What's that?
They were having a terrible season, obviously. And the owner, who was standing in a box, was tired of getting heckled at by fans and dumped his drink on the fans.
Really?
Yeah. And that just spells out the problem.
Yeah.
The ownership.
Bad ownership will destroy a team.
Yeah.
We've seen that with Washington. I believe they're under new ownership now, if I'm not mistaken.
Yeah, yeah.
And that's one of the points we're going to get into here in just a little bit. But we've seen how that can work miracles for a team when you change ownership. But the first few weeks this season have been some of the most fun to watch in recent memory. A lot of very close games, a lot of nail-biters.
Upsets.
A lot of upsets, and a lot of breakout teams and players that I don't think very many people expected. And the first one that I want to get into is Sam Darnold in Minnesota. He's stepping up for the injured J.J. McCarthy, who is out for the season. Like we talked about a few podcasts ago, Minnesota has had terrible luck over there recently. Sam didn't look great today. No touchdowns, only an interception. But overall, he's sitting at over 1,000 yards, 11 touchdowns, and 4 picks. He had a 4-touchdown game just a couple of weeks ago, and after their win versus the Jets today, they remain one of the only 2 undefeated teams still standing at the time of this recording. The Chiefs do play tomorrow night. They're the other remaining undefeated team. But, Andrew, how are you feeling about the Vikings team under Sam Darnold so far?
I mean, they're definitely not bad, but the only team that I could say they truly beat that is good was the 49ers.
True.
But, as we can tell, the 49ers might not be that good.
Right.
They did beat the Texans.
Mm-hmm.
But I don't know how much that was actually Sam Darnold, and maybe it was the elite receiving core. I'm not ready to, because again, he really struggled today. He really struggled.
He did.
So we're going to have to see how the season progresses, but I think a lot of people, based on today's performance, are taking Sam Darnold off the MVP frontrunner list.
Yeah, I don't think I would have ever put him on the MVP frontrunner list, but I do think it's just been interesting to see how he went from as bad as he was to sort of having a lot of potential, I would say, at minimum. Playing well, playing with a lot of potential, playing a lot better than I thought he would, playing a lot better than most people thought he would. So I'm excited to see what the future holds for him. And again, that's one of those situations, kind of like the Bryce Young situation, where you got to wonder how much of it is on the organization and how much of it is on the player. So it's cool to see him get a fresh start and kind of get his legs under him in that way.
That's fair, yeah.
But I didn't actually put this in my notes, but you did mention the 49ers. So speaking of the 49ers, I'm assuming one of the reasons that you mentioned that, as we're seeing, they might not be that good is today they actually ended up losing to the Cardinals.
Well, I mean, it's not just that. They've been losing more than they've been winning recently.
They have. They're 2-3 now. They do not look like the same 49ers that they were last year. Very surprising, because they were still one of my personal front runners going into this season.
It's really hard to say where this game went wrong. If you look at the stats between Kyler Murray and Brock Purdy, they're fairly similar. Brock Purdy threw one more interception. But
right.
Other than that, 19 of 35 for 244 yards for Brock Purdy versus Kyler Murray, 19 of 30 for 195 yards, 1 touchdown, 1 interception.
Yeah.
So what really stood out was that 50-yard run by Murray, which starts calling the question, is the 49ers defense still good, right?
Yep.
We understand if Brock Purdy takes a step back this year. He is Mr. Irrelevant, as much as it's hard to shake that moniker.
Right.
It doesn't change the fact that he was the best quarterback for this team at the time. I'm not ready to push any panic button if you're a 49ers fan. Remember, this team was just in the Super Bowl.
Absolutely.
So the last thing you want to do is push that panic button on this team.
Yeah.
But I don't know where it's going wrong. Debo ain't doing so well running anymore. Brendan Ayuk has really just blown out this season in general, and he did very well this game. 8 catches for 147 yards.
Nice.
But other than that, Debo only had 1 catch. Kittle, 8 catches. That's all fine and dandy. What I can say is congrats for the Cardinals for a beautiful upset. And again, I'm not ready to push any buttons saying Kyler Murray is good again.
Yeah. That, like you said, the big run was really one of the deciding factors from Kyler Murray and from that team in general. And also, like you said, that defense is a big thing. Defense wins championships. I'll always believe that. Growing up a Ravens fan, we've seen a number of years where the Ravens' defense has been the deciding factor over here. So
yeah,
defense definitely wins championships. And if you don't have a defense, even if Brock Purdy is stepping up and if he's starts playing well again, I think it's going to be hard to win games. You got so many contenders this year. So for them to fall behind a little bit at this point in the season, now they did only lose by 1 point today, but it'll be interesting to see how things shape up for the 49ers this year. But I do want to move over to Washington. Speaking about players and teams that have surprised us, this is arguably the most surprising for me. I want to talk a little bit about rookie quarterback Jayden Daniels. His accuracy coming into this week was the highest in a 4-week span since 1950. He surpassed the likes of Peyton Manning, Drew Brees, Tom Brady, and Kurt Warner. The Commanders did just win their Week 5 game against the Browns 34-13. Jayden threw just under 60% in that game. The offense was still looking pretty explosive, over 200 total yards rushing, 238 passing yards. They are now 4-1 at the top of the NFC East, and that is their first 4-1 start since 2008. So, Andrew, what do you make of how the Commanders are looking right now?
First thing is, I did not think about this at all. I kind of discounted them just because they're bringing in a new rookie quarterback.
Yeah.
I am happy to see Jayden Daniels succeed. I love, one of my favorite quarterback types is a mobile quarterback. You know?
Yep.
And I feel like Jayden Daniels is more than just a mobile quarterback because he's got an arm, he's got a beautiful deep ball.
He does. It's been very impressive to watch.
So I'm excited to see how this progresses throughout the season. They're turning out to be one of the easier divisions, surprisingly.
Yeah.
As the Eagles are suffering from a little drop-off right now, and the Cowboys are definitely suffering from a drop-off. They're playing right now.
Yeah, we have it on in while we're recording, actually.
Yeah. Currently leading 3-0 in the first quarter. It's been delayed.
Yeah,
as our recording was delayed.
Yep.
But no, so I'm actually pleasantly surprised about how the Commanders are doing this year, and I just want to see more Jayden Daniels play. I'm glad we live in Maryland and we actually get that game.
Yeah, yeah. It's one of the few, because a lot of this new exciting stuff around the NFL we don't get to see locally a lot of times, unless you have, the streaming services. But it's cool to be able to watch Jayden Daniels play. And like you said, he has a good deep ball too. Really good deep ball. Yeah. And another thing he's impressed me is just his decision-making to get that level of accuracy.
Oh, and it's such a
young age,
yeah.
Way ahead of his time. So I think that the future is going to be very, very bright for Jayden Daniels. And we've seen the Commanders move on from a lot of people at a young age. Hopefully they keep him around, and hopefully and their defense looks pretty solid too. It looks a lot better than it has in recent years.
I don't know if you heard about that other controversy that happened in that game, though.
What was that?
Apparently, and the full story came out, but it was a 4th down and goal after Deshaun, I believe, took a sack. And they were trying to call a play. They were down big. They needed to call a play. And Deshaun walked off the field.
Really?
Yeah. When news finally broke and Deshaun got to present his side of the story, there was too many people in the huddle. So he walked off the field in order to not get a penalty thrown. Because if the quarterback enters the huddle, you can throw the penalty.
Right.
But if you have 11 players in the huddle and the quarterback enters it, that's when the penalty... You can have as many people you want in that huddle.
Yeah.
Quarterback can't be in it, though. So I guess he did the right thing. But people spun it, so I just wanted to let you guys know. I don't think there's any controversy. There's no talks about him getting benched or anything. Is it time for the Browns to move on for Deshaun Watson? Yes.
Yeah, absolutely. I think it has been since they signed the guy.
Before they signed the guy.
Yeah.
Keep in mind, the Browns said... Not the Browns, but... Yeah, Deshaun Watson said no to the Browns. Then they offered him a fully guaranteed contract.
Yep.
And he said, okay, yeah, sure.
Yep. He's been sitting down for most of it. Yeah, it's just been crazy situation over there. And we're gonna get into actually our next game that I wanted to get into was Atlanta versus Tampa Bay, which Tampa Bay's where Baker's at now. That kind of ties in. Baker's playing pretty well over there.
Thursday night football.
Yeah, that Thursday night game this past week was an absolute banger.
One of the best Thursday night games this year.
It was. We don't get very many good ones. This one was a good one. It was
surprisingly.
Yeah, the Atlanta Falcons ended up defeating the Bucs 36-30 in overtime. Quite the show. Kirk Cousins put up 509 yards and 4 touchdowns.
Is that the first 500-yard game of the season?
I believe so. I'm not 100% sure, but I believe it is.
I believe we said it. We just got to kind of give Kirk time to adjust to this new offense, and he adjusted, and he delivered a beautiful game.
Yeah, they're building a lot of chemistry over there and starting to put it all together.
Yep, Drake London showed out with 12 catches for 154.
Yeah.
And a touchdown.
Yeah, they're starting to look like the Atlanta Falcons that we thought they would be when they started making all those moves.
Yeah. Kyle Pitts had 88 yards on the day.
Yep. They're finally getting some stuff out of all the talent that they've had over there. I think Kirk Cousins could be that missing piece, and they have a pretty solid run game too, so it's been fun to watch them.
I think it's going to be a battle between the Falcons and the Bucs for their division, though.
Yeah, absolutely. I think when we picked early division leaders, I went with the Falcons.
Same.
But Baker's been doing really well over there for the Bucs, and Bucs as a whole have looked pretty solid. They've looked a little better than I thought they would this year. So that'll be an interesting division to follow as well. But, man, what a performance from Kirk Cousins. But over in Houston, Texans ended up defeating the Bills, handing them their second straight loss. Josh Allen only threw 9 of 30 passing attempts.
30% completion percentage.
That's insane, especially for Josh Allen.
Yep.
Only 131 yards this game. C.J. Stroud threw 331 yards. Went 28 of 38 on the day. Both of them had a touchdown, and there was a little bit of a scary and controversial scene. Josh ended up getting tackled and hitting his head off on the turf. You could see his head bounce off the turf, and he appeared to briefly be unconscious. He was allowed to continue to play. He said after the game he, quote, felt good enough to go back out, is what he said. People are now questioning that concussion protocol during that game. Bills fall to 3-2 after starting out 3-0. Now tied with us, the Ravens, at 3-2, who started at 0-2. So, Andrew, do you think there's a cause for panic over in Buffalo right now?
No cause for panic. Listen, maybe he was concussed early in that game, or maybe he was just having an off night, but Josh Allen is a premier quarterback in this league. I wouldn't press any panic button if you're Bills Mafia, you know?
Yeah.
But one interesting stat, and I'm just going to say this because a lot of people like to put down Lamar. Allen has now become the first quarterback in the last 30 seasons with at least 30 pass attempts. This is a very weird statistic I pulled straight off of NFL.com. To have a completion percentage of 30%. The lowest completion percentage in the last 30 seasons with at least 30 passing attempts.
Right.
And also in the first half, Josh Allen was 0-6 anytime he was under pressure. So it just wasn't the same Josh Allen that we saw last week, even against the Ravens.
Yeah, it wasn't at all.
He was under pressure and was able to deliver a 40-yard dime. It's a little scary, but I don't think there's any just reason. They almost came back and won.
They did.
They were down, 20-3?
I believe
and the final
so,
score
yeah.
was 23-20.
Yeah.
And it took a 59-yard field goal by Kaimi Fairbairn.
Yeah. I will say I think the concussion was in the fourth quarter, so there's not really not much of a justification for his performance. But
and I can't put all of the misses on the receivers, but there was a few drops during this game.
Yeah, a few drops. He doesn't have the best offensive line, but you mentioned comparing him to Lamar.
Yeah.
Lamar doesn't have the best offensive line either. Of course, Lamar is 1 of 1 when it comes to scrambling, but I don't know. This is very unusual for Josh Allen. I have no doubt he'll bounce back. I did mention before the season started when we were doing our early predictions that I had a feeling the Bills might kind of regress a little bit. I think we might be seeing that, but I think there's still a good chance they'll make the playoffs, so I think it's a little too early to panic if you're a Buffalo Bills fan. Of course, we love that organization and those fans. They've done a lot for Lamar when he had his concussion. A bunch of them actually got together and donated to Lamar's charity. A lot of respect for that fan base. Probably my favorite in the NFL. So we wish them the best, and it'll be interesting to see how they respond to all the adversity. But speaking of the 300-yard club, rookie Caleb Williams threw for 304 yards today, 3 touchdowns. He went 20 of 29 attempts. Worth mentioning, it was against Carolina. Not very good, but nonetheless, what do you make of today's arguably Caleb Williams' best NFL game to date, Andrew?
I don't even think it's an argument. It is his best NFL game to date. First of all, he continues to progress week to week. He hit that 300-yard mark today. that is great. He had 2 touchdowns, no interceptions, but he almost threw a pick 6 on his first throw of the game. It was so close to being gone. And then he had multiple 3-and-outs to start the game. So the struggles were still there, but he got into a rhythm. He kept on it. And I think that Bears fans should start to see the light with Caleb Williams. He's really starting to shine out there, and I definitely can see him taking that next step to being a good quarterback.
Yeah, we've talked about his potential a lot and the skills that he showcased in college, and even we've seen glimpses of it here and there. I think experience is the one thing that's lacking for him. I think, of course, you could compare him to a guy like Jaden Daniels, who just seems to have it all figured out pretty early. But sometimes guys just take a little bit of time to adjust. I think Caleb Williams will get there, and I think this is a really good showing for him. And it's a showing that his potential is really unlimited for what he can do over there in Chicago. Unlimited. But yeah, I'm excited to see what he can do moving forward, and I'm glad to see he finally put together another impressive game. Like you said, he seems to get better every game, so
absolutely
excited to continue watching them over there. But yeah, Andrew, what other games did you have that you wanted to highlight from?
Well, first of all, it's not really the game I wanted to highlight. It was just more of a question.
Okay.
The Patriots-Dolphins game, which had a final score, a very riveting game of 15-10 in favor of the Dolphins. Poor Dolphins. They lost Devon Achane today. No Tua still. But that leads us to the Patriots controversy. Only able to scrounge up 10 points. Are we starting to see the Patriots get closer and closer to utilizing Drake May and moving forward with him as a starting quarterback?
Well, I think that's kind of a similar situation to what we saw in Carolina. I think if you have a quarterback that's not able to contribute in a big way to winning you games, obviously football's a team sport, but quarterback is the quarterback for a reason. He's the leader of the team.
Yep.
If you don't have a good quarterback, you're not going to win NFL football games. I think that's the key piece to an offense. So really it starts with the quarterback, and I think if I'm the Patriots and you're focused on winning, I would consider going with the other guys. Like I mentioned when we talked in a previous episode about who we think should start over there, my vote was actually Joe Milton. I just like his heart. I like the way he makes plays. I like the energy he plays with. And Drake May looked really good statistically, but I just really like watching Joe Milton play. So I'd like to see one of those other guys get a chance, and I think there's a good chance we might see that if the season doesn't start turning around in some way, shape, or form.
Yeah, I don't think it's going to start turning around unless they make a move.
No.
But it's not like they have many weapons over there in New England. I mean, they are in probably, year 3 now are rebuilding.
Yep.
Just moved on from Mac Jones.
Yep.
Yeah, no. Just something I forgot to mention earlier about the Texans game. This is now the Texans' 5th straight home win.
Oh, wow.
They continue to dominate at home, and I know 23-20 win isn't domination, but they were up 20-3 at one point.
Yeah.
So I'll call it as it is. They continue to dominate. And one last thing I forgot to mention is that I think C.J. Stroud is back, and he's finally getting back into his stride.
Yeah.
I would look at him to be in the conversation of MVP candidate soon.
Yeah, they look pretty good over there. They're starting to put it together again. We're coming up on, what are we, about a third of the quarter of the way through the season now? So soon we'll be at the midway point, and we'll have a lot to go off of at that point. But yeah, there's been a lot of very exciting games to watch, lots of surprises, and I'm sure a ton more to come as well. So very excited to continue to follow as the season progresses. I'm sure it'll be a hell of a season to keep up with. Really, what we're learning is that, after the 49ers struggling, the Bills struggling, the Ravens coming back from 0-2, the Washington being 4-1, the season's so unpredictable. Everybody's really even. It's really anybody's game at this point. So
absolutely
fun season to watch so far. But Andrew, if you don't have anything else, we can go ahead and wrap up this episode.
Nope. Actually, yeah. One last thing.
What's that?
Because we talked about Sam Darnold, but we didn't talk about Vikings Jets.
Okay.
Yeah. So, Vikings Jets. Is this Sam Darnold's revenge game? Could we consider it that? He won
Yeah, he did
Kind of
win.
struggled, but you know who struggled worse than Sam Darnold?
Tell me.
Aaron Rodgers.
How many interceptions did he throw?
3.
Wow.
3. Aaron Rodgers went 29 of 54 for 244 yards, 2 touchdowns, 3 interceptions.
Yeah, that's...
it wasn't pretty.
Those are not... 29 of 54?
29 of 54. Yeah.
That's a lot of passing.
Yeah, that is. On the other hand, Sam Darnold went 14 of 31. So, really, who's better off right now? They're overpaying for an aging quarterback versus underpaying for a possibly good quarterback.
Yeah.
And also, I wanted to point out that earlier in our podcast, I said Sam Darnold could use this as an opportunity to revitalize his career, and that's exactly what he did.
Yep. Got that win, helped his team stay undefeated.
Yep.
And Aaron Rodgers continues to leave questions about what he's going to look like for the rest of the season. We saw him finally put together a good game. What was it, last week, I think? He finally threw for over 200 yards, threw a few touchdowns.
Yeah.
Looked like old Aaron Rodgers again, but now he's back to struggling. So, of course, the Jets aren't a very good team. I don't know if their coaching situation is the best. I don't know if their team is the best. But to see Aaron Rodgers struggle like that is just crazy. And we've talked about whether this might be his downfall or not in previous episodes. I think that's what we're witnessing. So, if you want to talk about panicking, if I was a Jets fan, I wouldn't hold your breath for Aaron Rodgers. I don't think he's going to do anything miraculous this season. But yeah, very excited for Sam Darnold. Like I said, very unpredictable year this year, that's for sure. So lastly, before we wrap up here, we have a Thursday night game coming up. That's going to be Seattle and San Francisco. Andrew, who do you have winning that game?
It's a little rough. Both these teams are kind of struggling to this point in the season. I could really see it going anyway. But I probably have San Francisco by 3.
Yeah, I would probably agree with that exactly, to be honest with you. We saw the Seahawks lose today. They put together a good first few games. Honestly, I would put both of those teams about dead even right now as it stands.
Yeah.
But I think the 49ers have just a more loaded team in terms of talent. So I think if they put it together, it'll be a close game. I think the 49ers are going to end up taking that one probably by 1 score. But let us know in the comments who you got winning the Thursday night football game, and let us know your thoughts on all the other things you heard in this episode. And Andrew, you got anything else for the people?
I have nothing else for the people.
All right, that's going to wrap up our section, our podcast episode. Like I said earlier on, we are splitting the podcast, so there is more podcasts you can check out in just a couple days when we upload the next one, depending on when you're watching this. Again, we're going to try for Wednesdays and Fridays every other week. So Wednesdays will be the main episode. We're going to go ahead and record the wrestling episode right now, so we're going to hop off of here. But be sure to check out the wrestling episode. You can, check out the dates, see when they correspond. But come on over and talk about some wrestling with us as well. Check us out on Instagram and Spotify. Subscribe on YouTube. We're available on all of those platforms, and like I said, going to continue to expand. So we appreciate all your love and support. Be sure to check us out in our new episodes. So head on over there, and we'll catch you in the next one.